with other colleagues. So we have actually a shared office with the Association of Zoological Gardens. So we are interacting every day. And we have like an executive board, of course, and this is also reflecting like our close link to the zoo. So we have 3 representatives from the association, and we have 3 representatives from NGOs to have like a balance between these 2 parts, like the in situ and ex situ component. And of course, we've got an advisory board as well, like being balanced with 5 representatives from the association and 5 representatives from conservation NGOs. And of course, we are a member of IUCN. We work in close collaboration with citizen conservation who are more involved in ex situ conservation, including private keepers. We are a member of the European Zoo Association, member of the German Zoo Association. We have a good collaboration with GJAP, who is like also German NGO, also having a close link to the German zoos and doing in situ projects. So this is the people in our executive board. It's the director of the Zoo Leipzig. This is the executive director of the association. Then we have Doug Enke, director of the Tiergarten Nürnberg. And we have 3 people that represent the NGOs part. Jörg Adler as board member of ZJAP. Then we have Arnulf Könke, working in a foundation here in Berlin. And we've got Thomas Tennart, a specialist on species and nature conservation, mostly focusing on Central Asia. And this is a list of people that are in our advisory board and talking for people in the field of amphibians. You might know Thomas Ziegler, I guess. That's done somebody who is well known in that community. And Sandra Honig's also working very much with amphibians. So these are our 2 specialists, mostly in the field of amphibians and reptiles. And I by myself, so I was working in snakes in my former time, so I'm more a snake guy, but now I have to deal with all the other animals and amphibians and reptiles. But my focus was on snakes, and yeah. Of course, we've got a strategy here at our foundation. So our vision is that with our partner, the association, we want to make a significant and effective contribution to conservation of endangered animal species. So our focus is on animals and not on plants. And for mission, so we want to have a long-term protection in our projects. We want to bring in the expertise of the zoos. So we're really aiming for getting the expertise of the zoos into the projects, and at the same time getting like the expertise from the experts in the field back to the zoos. And we want to have a broad communication of our work into the public. Yes, and our foundation objectives, it's the promotion of nature, species and environmental conservation, animal welfare, science and research, education, international understanding, and development cooperation. And I know, as like talking with people here in our IUCN meeting, I don't have to talk that much about the One Planet approach, but it's something we're really following on. So we want to include everybody, every stakeholder that has some interest in protected species, or who's like concerned or like kind of involved in the measures that needs to be taken to protect the species. So everybody needs to be involved to get together and come up with a joint conservation strategy. And of course, in the special case, to look at the meta population, combining ex situ populations with in situ populations to come up with this integrated species conservation strategy to follow the common goal of protecting the species. So this is also kind of part of the strategy of this association. So we've got the European Association here on top, and the German Association, which are mostly focusing on ex situ projects, but more and more also supporting in situ projects. So they do actually both, although the history is mostly from the ex situ part. And there's, like, as I mentioned, citizen conservation, a German NGO who tries to have more and more private keeper that already keep amphibians, reptiles, and fish to keep rather threatened species than like the classic colorful amphibians or reptiles that are not threatened. They manage these populations as zoos do. So they being part of the ex situ component of the strategy. And of course, we, as for our foundation here, we are mostly dealing with in situ projects on the other side. So this is like these 3 NGOs, they work in really close collaboration. And within our German association, we have some working groups, and we have good collaborations with other zoo associations. And one specific conservation working group that is something that we organize twice a year. So we bring together people from the German zoos twice a year. We meet in zoos and we talk about conservation work of zoos and how this can be linked to in situ conservation and how we can like develop conservation strategies of the zoos together with our partners in the field. Yeah, as I mentioned, so this is the idea behind our project. So what we are aiming for is that we have the zoos, they have a lot of expertise in breeding animal species, they have expertise in research and veterinary care, and of course they are really well known for education of the visitors. So we've got a lot of expertise here, and we have us as foundation who makes the links to projects in the field. And there, of course, are some problems that they are facing. Mostly it's financial wise. We can support them with just our project funds, but also with expertise from the zoo. So every time we support projects, I ask our project partners, do you have anything specific that you want to ask to people to take care of that species in the zoo? Because they might get you provide you with some information that might be relevant for your work. But talking to these people, you easily find out that there's even more expertise within the field. So we have a lot of people, and this, I think all of you here joining that meeting, that are really well trained and having a lot of expertise about the species, how they behave, and what they feed on in the wild. So it's also a goal of us to get this expertise back to the zoos to solve problems that they have, maybe by just keeping that species, so to feed the species or have the wide enclosures for the species. So it's communication. The communication is both ways, and it's not just us. So ZJEP is doing almost the same. So we are, as I mentioned, working good collaboration, and I think in conservation we need to have a lot of partners for our joint goals. Yes, as I mentioned, we are supported mostly by zoos. This is all the zoos that support us at the moment. It's about like 41 zoos in Germany, and we have some supporters in Europe outside of Germany that support us every year financial wise. So if anybody from zoos is present here, thank you very much for your support. So this money is like part of the Amphibian fund that I'm going to talk about later. So talking about like financing, so as I mentioned, we are mostly funded by the zoos, other partner zoos, but there's also like organizations that support us. We're applying for third-party fundings with applications, and we have the second part with private donations, which is not that well developed at the moment. So we're mostly focusing on getting support from the zoos, but of course we get also like private donations, and we are always open for sponsorships with companies or other institutions. Yeah, and so in the past, or at the moment, we have like a lot of projects worldwide. This is like a map showing the actual, or like the involvement of within the last 2 years. We have mostly 35 projects in 19 countries with 60 species. And this is not just amphibians, it's invertebrates. For me, it's really important to have like, I mean, you know, most of the species on Earth are invertebrates, and it's not really reflected in zoos. That's why I think it should always be the case that at least there's some projects in our portfolio dealing with invertebrates, and we have fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and also mammals. So we are open for all animal species and almost for all countries. There are some exceptions, but in principle, we are able to support projects all over the world. Yeah, we divide our funding program mostly in 3 parts. So we have the short-term project grant, where we normally have a call once a year. And I have to say at that time here that this year there will be no call on short-term projects because we are kind of changing our portfolio. That's why we were deciding only have a call on amphibians. But these are the recipients from the last year's calls. These are the ongoing projects. And you see we have monkeys, we have chameleons, we have focus on Madagascar. There's a cat in Central America. We have skink in Madagascar, like the Bengal florican in Nepal. So some different projects all over the world. And of course, we've got the Amphibian grant. This is an ongoing projects, and I'm not going to talk too much about these at the moment because I would rather talk about the application process. So really nice species, and I'm really happy that for the first time we have Sicilians within that funding program. As I said, I like snakes, and it's at least amphib without having any limbs. So it's not a snake, but it looks like for some people. So, but actually the reason is, so there's not much work that is done on Sicilian. So I'm really happy that we have this group of amphibians also covered by our amphibian funds this year. And we have our long-term projects. At the moment, it's 4 projects. And so this is our oldest project, the gibbon protection in Central Highland of Vietnam. Then for about 3 years now, we are supporting an NGO in Sulawesi on different species. And we started with flying fox. And like 2 years ago, we started our involvement in Madagascar. So we were supporting a lot of projects in Madagascar. And we still have, I guess, 4 or 5 projects going on in Madagascar, and 2 of them having a long-term perspective. And last year, for the first time, we started to have a project here in Germany on the highly threatened fire salamander, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more now. So this is a species here in Germany, which is a very charismatic species that people know about. There's not so many knowledge about amphibians in the broader public, but this is a species, if you just ask people on the street, they know about the fire salamander. But what they don't know is that there's a fungus, like the basal fungus, that attacks the skin and that leads to the animals that they die in the field. So in the Netherlands and Belgium, there's a lot of populations that are almost gone because of this disease. And this disease is now spreading in Germany as well. And this is a publication by Stefan Dötters from 5 years ago. And there's a Steigerwald in Bavaria over here. And there's also like some records of that fungus. And we started to be involved in that area here. Because what is done at the moment is that the authorities, in this case, the authorities in Bavaria, they have a monitoring program. So they're doing this classic swapping in the field, and they just collect the salamanders, they do the swap, and they bring, they just let the salamander go right away. And at the end of the season, they just send all the swap tests to the lab, for the diagnostic. And at the end of the year, they know that like 8 or 12% of the animals have been positive. But that means that these animals still are in the field and they die in the field, and there's so no extra measures with the positive animals. And we decided that this can be improved. So this is a project with Stiftung Artenschutz and also other partners like the University of Würzburg. And they have a field station close by that forest. And actually we are just, when the guy go into the field for the swapping, we have another guy just going with them, and they take the salamanders and we put them in quarantine for 3 until 4 days until we get the test results. And once we know that the animal is negative, it gets back into the field. If it's positive, it's not going back to the field. It goes to the Tiergarten Nürnberg. There they do a chemotherapy so they can cure the animals from the fungus. And then these animals will be part of a ex situ conservation breeding population. So they don't go back to the field. They're just the founder animals for this ex situ population. I think this really nicely shows how all these people and NGOs and universities and authorities work together to do the best for the salamanders. And this is part of the Fire Salamander Network. So this is a network of people and institutions in Germany which have been founded last year in Zoo Hannover. And this is the logos of all the people involved, like a lot of zoos, universities, us as a foundation. And these are the guys that meet in Hannover that time. Yeah, but now let me talk a little bit about the Amphibian Conservation Fund. So this is has been established like 15 years ago almost. It was covering 82 projects in 38 countries with about 80 species. And also something from the history, you know that we have about 40% of amphibians at risk, listed as critical or endangered or vulnerable. And yeah, there was this change in thinking in 2004 with the publication of the Global Amphibian Assessment, and that led to, or there was a driver for like projects to start, like the Amphibian Arc by ICIA and VASA and EASA. Then there was campaigns from VASA, campaign from the EASA, from the European Zoo Association, and this campaign was coordinated in Germany by Stiftung Artenschutz. So we were collecting the money from the German zoos to feed the money into the campaign and then direct the money to the projects that should be supported by the campaign. And after that campaign ended, it was decided that they will just stick with collecting money from the German zoos for amphibians. So then this dedicated fund was created, and we called it Amphibian Conservation Fund. And since then it's established, and we have the calls like since 4 years now or 5 years. Before that, there was just some projects supported and by this fund. And so the aims are direct protection measures and habitat conservation. Then it can be captive breeding, reproduction, applied research, staff training, like capacity building, public awareness and education. This is the focus of this conservation fund. And so this, as I already mentioning, is the actual grantees of last year's calls. This is the titles and the species and the countries. But looking at the time, I'm not going to introduce all of the projects. So I just briefly can show like one slide each project, but I don't know, I'm not going into details here. So we have a project in Brazil on a really nice looking species. And I think it was also part of the last frog log. So people should know already what that species from the frog log. And of course, we have the project on Sicilians. I think Vishal, you are present here at the moment. So if there are any questions on that, you can directly ask Vishal. He knows much better than I do. And we've got like a project in Nepal, a species that is highly hunted just for leisure activities or for food and medicine to support that conservation part here in Nepal. And we have a project in Madagascar, since we have this focus on Madagascar, and also have some projects on amphibians in Madagascar, of course. So let's talk like the last 10 minutes about the actual call. So the call is already open since I guess a week now or so, and the deadline is the end of August, so it's still some time. And please submit your proposals to our office mail address, office@stiftung-artenschutz.de. So my colleagues will then get back to you if everything is okay. And you can find all the information on our website. The link is provided here as well, but just go on the website, go on funding, and there you will see like the documents for the Amphibian Conservation Fund. And as mentioned, it supports global conservation and research projects, captive breeding. I'm not going to repeat all of this. So all of the measures that are kind of related to the conservation of amphibians. And of course, when doing the selection process, we take a look on the red list status. So if your species is critical or endangered, it's more likely to be funded. But it does not mean that we do not fund projects on species that are not critical or endangered. So as with Sicilians, there's not much data available. So of course, there's also the possibility to support projects with species that have no data, but you have to explain why you think your research or your project is important to get more knowledge or information or whatever for the species, although it's not listed as critical. And of course, we want you to follow IUCN Species Survival Commission guidelines, and we are really in favor of advertising the ACAP. So please take a look at that. This should not sit somewhere in a bookshelf. So if you go through a document and if you refer to the document in your application process, this is really pretty much welcome. So please use that kind of document. I think this is a really good thing to work with. And for us, the priority, of course, is most in conservation action rather than like basic research. So if there's basic research, again, you have to explain like the impact and why this is important to protect the species. But if it's too much part of basic research, it's not that likely to be funded within this grant. And of course, we are open to early stage NGOs, and this is also focus. So we really are aiming for supporting early stage NGOs that are just applying for the first or second grant or so. So don't hesitate. So this is really something for the early stage NGOs or early career scientists, early career conservationists. So please submit your proposals. And it's even the other way around. So if you have an NGO, a really big one, which is really well established with a lot of funding, it's not so likely that you will get the funds. So this is something about like the timeline and the selection process. So we have our call open now. And the first thing that we do is, so if you send in your applications, there will be a formal review by our office colleagues here. So that they check is everything is included in your application. They will get back to you and say, well, yeah, everything's okay. You will now be part of the external reviewing process. So it means we then direct your applications to external reviewers. And we normally have like, so last year we had like about 30 applications, and few of them are just dropped out because they were not fitting in, because there was not project on amphibians, or there was just parts missing, but it's mostly because they are not dealing with the right animal group. Then we have the external reviews, and then these are collected and evaluated. And then we have our advisory board that comes up with a shortlist. And the shortlist normally consists of 10 projects in the end. And then the final decision will be made by our executive board. And it depends on how much funding we actually have. So if there's a lot of funding from the zoos, we can support more projects, but we always have a minimum of 4. And in the last years, it was always more than that, like 5 to 6, sometimes it's 8. So it's really a question of how much money we get from the zoos. And of course, it's a question of how many applications we get. But so the percentage is not too bad. So just try. And all the process needs some time. So if you apply for the grant, we normally inform the people or the applicants somewhere in November. So it takes some time, but definitely not in October, because the reviewers need time, and then there needs to be the meetings with the boards. So until November, it's normally the time where we notify the applicants, and then project start should be around the 1st of 26. But if you say, well, at that time it's dry season here, and we can only start in April, and we will just sit around the first months, then it's of course easy to say we start the project in March or April, depending on the season that you want to work with the species. Yeah, and there's some formal criteria that needs to be fulfilled. So project duration should not exceed 12 months. So it's a time-limited application, and there's a budget required that needs to be detailed and realistic. So, and the fund should not exceed 5,000 euros. And of course, partial funding is possible. So if your overall cost of the project is like 15,000 euros and you are only applying for 5,000 euros, that's possible. But you just have to indicate that in your budget and also in the application form. But if your overall budget is 1 million and you are asking for 5,000, then it's not likely that we'll get to get the money. So we need to have like a significant part. We have to be a significant part of the overall funding of the project. That's also something which is important, or should be that's important. And of course, you need a reference letter. So you have to ask like an expert or of your institution to write this kind of typical reference letter, which then needs to be directed, sent to us by email. And for us, it's important to support NGOs. So at latest, when we start the transfer of the money, before that, we need to have a proof of your NGO status, meaning your registration number or legal documents stating that you are having an NGO, because that's often necessary for the bank transfer and also for the taxes here in Germany. This is not necessary with the initial application, but at some part of the process we need that kind of documentation. So if you have it, please send it right away, because we will ask for it anyway. Yeah, so everything needs to be sent together to us by email. And this is the details about the grant. I have like the proposal form and the budget open, so I've like a few more minutes, I guess. So maybe I can just open the documents without going to the details. But before that, I just want to thank you. And of course, you can take a look. I invite you to take a look at our social media channels. We are always open for links and collaborative posts. So please tag us and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. We are happy to connect with you. And maybe I can just close my presentation for now. And if we have time or specific questions on the grant, I can maybe then open the form or the budget. And something which is important to let you know is that this is actually last thing I do before I go to holidays. So if you have specific questions, please ask them now, because if you send me an email, it might take 2 or 3 weeks until I reply. Or my colleagues, of course, I will reply. But if you have like a specific question, it's rather good to ask them now than by email, like on Monday, because I'm already off next Monday. So from my side, thank you very much for being here, for attending, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tobias. This was very this was amazing. I think that there are a lot of people interested in the grant. So we already have some questions in the chat. Um, I think all the questions are directed to the same thing, and it is that is it possible to wait, sorry. It's only possible submissions by NGOs or university and research centers are accepted.
Mm. That is a common question, so it's possible. There's just two things that needs to be fulfilled. So what we are not allowed to is to pay overheads. So quite often it's the case that if a university asks for grants, then the university takes overheads for their normal like say that's the classic overhead thing. So we are not we always have to pay the money for the actual conservation work and not for the basic staff of the university. So we need a writing from the university that is like this is comparable to the legal documentation of the NGO, meaning so it just should state that you are part of the university program, that you are employed, and that the university will not take any overheads, and then it's possible to apply as university to as well. So it's in principle possible, but we are not allowed to pay overheads. The money needs to go into conservation, and we can pay salaries, but not like for the normal like administration of the university. That's not something that we can pay for.
Okay, thank you. The other question is, can registered early stage NGOs 1 to 2 years of existence apply?
Yes, exactly. Yes. I mean, that is one of our main focus groups. So if you're a young early stage NGO, that's exactly what we're aiming for. So there's a first year, 1 year grant for you to apply for, and I think it's important if you apply that the reference letter should indicate that. So ask your referee to state something about the status of our NGO, saying this is an early stage NGO and these kind of things that we are aware about that. Right, this is important, but definitely if you, we just need the legal documents, but of course, please apply, especially if you're a early stage NGO.
Perfect. Um, it says, thank you very much for the brilliant presentation. Do you fund the elaboration of conservation action plan?
Yes, so we are, as I said, we are supporting action plans, and we are pretty much supporting the action ACAP of the Amphibian Specialist Group, because we think it's really important. But for us, it's really important that these documents are used, right? So if you are applying for a project in elaboration of the kind of action plans, say you need money for a workshop or kind of things, that's something that we were supporting in the past, but you need to indicate in your application why this is important and how you involve the stakeholders and other kind of things, and how you are going to use the action plan in the future. But then it's possible, yes.
Excellent. So we have another question over here. Hello, everyone. Thank you for this valuable initiative in support of amphibian conservation. I am currently based in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and I'm following this webinar with great interest. I would like to know if the applications to the Amphibian Conservation Fund are also accepted in French.
Mhm. So I speak French. I spent some time in Paris, but I'm not such fluent in French to give a talk. I gave a talk in French on Madagascar recently. But anyway, the issue with application in French is that we have reviewers that don't speak French. And so and from our status, it needs to be submitted in either German, which is even more harder for you than in French, I guess. So it must be in English or in German. But we are aware that with having this regulation, we exclude people from some countries, because we know there are some countries where English is much better distributed than other. But if you're a native speaker, you have an advantage by writing the application. It's just faster. You're much better in getting all the good phrase together. So we cannot allow a application in French, but I would I would say so. We were supporting some projects from Western Africa in the past, and there was again the review letter was saying, so please consider that the guys that apply for your grant are not that fluent in French, in English, and that this should be considered. So if we see that the application is in English, but it's not by a somebody who's really fluent in English, it's it's okay. But of course, we need to get all the information out of the application. So I can only advise to find somebody who has some English knowledge to transfer the application, or maybe we are a group here of people from the ICN. That's maybe something that people here in the ICN that are organized can maybe are fluent in both French and English and can maybe help you with writing that application. Maybe this would also be something for the future, which I would really love to establish, that we have like this kind of meetings. And if somebody says, well, I'm only speaking French, or somebody else said, well, I'm doing both pretty well and I can help you with that. That might be something which we can maybe establish here. So the short answer actually is no, we are not accepting application in French, but I want to motivate people to support.
Thank you. We have a lot of questions. So, is it possible for the NGOs to be supported a fund for ongoing conservation education?
For fun, for ongoing conservation, as education, of course, yeah. I don't know what you mean with ongoing. I mean, I just already started. Yeah. So uh, of course, the project can already be started, but for the application, education is covered. That's not an issue. It's rather if you have an ongoing project, you need to have to state in the application form in the budget this is some specific part of the project. So we need to know what the money is spent for and what part. So it's then easiest that you say we have this ongoing conservation education project, and we are applying for this part of that project. So to have like this time of 1 year. So we need to see that this is something which has a start and an end. And this is something which is maybe something I have to say. So if you want to fund people, so the issue is if we have an application and most of the money is for salaries or just only salaries, then we have the issue that we start to support funding for somebody for a year and we don't have an answer what comes after. So if you have a strong component with salaries, then you really have to make clear how you are going to support the staff after the grant has ended, because we want to have the people working conservation for a longer time, but we cannot like support the projects for 10 years and pay the staff. So if staff is involved in salaries, then you have to make clear what comes after this 1 year, because otherwise we are. The various will just ask the question: what comes after? Is this person going to quit? And being out of conservation is something that we have to think about while we are deciding on the applications.
Can one person NGO apply for more than one project at a time?
Yeah, so you can apply for for more than one project, but the possibility that you get both projects funded is rather low, but of course the chances are higher by applying 2 times. So yeah, you can hand in 2 applications, but I would say that at least the advisory board would say so we can either support one of those. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. What kind of documents needed proof of being an NGO as a
Well,
proof?
that depends on the country, actually. So some countries, they just have a document where stated that your NGO has been established, or sometimes it's just a number of authorities that you're listed as an NGO. And in Germany, they are actually starting a kind of list of NGOs from abroad where you can sign in, but it's not established yet. So in the future, there will be the possibility to sign in that list in Germany, and then we can just pick you from that list. But it's something which is not established at the moment. So in that respect, just send in what you have, and we check if that fits, because I cannot answer a question for every country. It really depends on the country. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Another question is that I think you already answered this,
Yes.
but do you fund amphibian awareness, like yeah,
Yeah.
like education programs?
Yeah, we were supporting like awareness projects in the past quite often. So it's at least always a component, not always, but most of the time it's at least a component of the projects. That so awareness is definitely something that we support. Yeah.
Okay. Can a reference letter be signed by another NGO who has long-term experience in the field and can collaborate? And collaboration be possible for the project implementation with this NGO?
Yeah, that's possible. So I mean, it should not be somebody from within your NGO. So if you have that letter signed by a president, that would not work, of course. But if you have like that means if you get a reference letter from somebody and that is he's involved as a collaborator, that does not mean that he's not allowed to be a collaborator anymore. So of course, if you have a collaboration and this guy really knows about your NGO and can write the letter, then he should write the letter. Yes, that's possible.
Thank you. Two more questions to go. Can individual universities graduate, apply, or must be linked with an NGO?
Well, yeah, as I said before, so if you're in a university, you need to contact like the university to write a letter with our recommendations in respect to overheads. But I mean, if you're linked with NGO, it's even easier, right? So it's easiest is if you're part of an easy NGO or that you're linked to an NGO. But if that's not possible, it can also be via an university with the specific regulations.
Okay, perfect. And can I focus application at the population level? I'm working in a protected area with multiple amphibian species, including 4 vulnerable species, but current threats are affecting all species. So conservation actions would be focused on the habitat level.
Yeah, no, that's also possible, of course. Yeah. But as I said, just make that clear in your application, and then that's definitely so we're not only focusing on species or on the single population. So if it's something with landscapes or protected areas, there's a lot of species, of course, that's something that we support. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. We do not have more questions in the chat, but if you do have questions, please use this time to ask them because Tobias is going to be on a holiday, so he's not going to be able to answer as fast.
I mean, if it's questions just on the formal regulations, my colleagues are able to answer. But if it's more specific, then but I think I answered already quite a lot of questions. But yeah.
I have a question on my end. Do you have like a first round, for example, if I have an idea or anyone has an idea to send you the general idea just to get a feedback before sending the formal application?
Yeah, with the Amphibian grant, we don't have that because in the past we did not get so many applications, like 30 is something that we can easily manage. With the small
Yeah.
grant program, it was definitely something that we got like more than 100 applications a year, which then ended up with a lot of work for us. And we were thinking about this kind of extra round where the people were just have to apply with a small like abstract, and then we can say because sometimes you, especially for the small grants, if somebody is like applying for the white shark, and we say, well, white shark is not part of our portfolio, it's not really fitting in, then
Yeah.
they do all the work to get the application together. And at the end, I have to say, well, it's a nice application, but it doesn't fit in the portfolio. Then it's just waste of time. People should rather use the time for conservation than writing application, which has no chance of to be funded.
Yeah.
So that's something we were discussing in the past. But like for the amphibians, it was not really something so important. I don't know if it will change this year with this presentation I give today. I don't know if I advertise too much and I will end up having 100 applications. Then maybe next year we will have this kind of thing. But so if you do not make it this round, or if you don't have the time, or you think you need one more year, then you can, of course, during this year, ask over the time, write an email and say, so what about this kind of project? Would that in principle be possible? But then I would say, well, yeah, that would be an option, but you have to send it in the next call in July 2026. Yeah, but
Okay.
the Amphibian grant is not at the moment is not part of the application process.
Okay. Thank you. So we have more questions coming. um, Let me just check here. Um, Is it possible to get a reference letter from a collaborator who's based outside the applicant's country
Yes,
of residence?
klar. Yes, it doesn't matter. So we're international. So it's just needs to be in English or German, and everything's fine.
Okay, perfect. Do you support herpetological survey projects as a baseline for conservation efforts?
Yeah, depends. We did that, and at the moment we do that in Madagascar, where we know that there's a specific area which is which facing a lot of threats, and of course we want to know about the animals living in that area. So this is possible, but always have to link it. So what the information is, how the information is used afterwards. So if it's just a survey and it's a publication, it's rather it needs to be clear. So what was the next step? Where you use the data for. But
Okay,
it's not something which we say it's not possible. It really depends on the context.
perfect. We are planning to do long-term monitoring in my college campus, and we have more threatened amphibians in our place. If so, how is the possibility of getting these selection procedures?
Mm, I don't know what means long term. So you mean long? So if it's more than 1 year, that's the main question behind it, or so I mean, working on more than one species is possible, of course, and being part of a long-term monitoring also is possible. But if you have a project and you say, well, this project is running for 5 years, and we only want to apply for the second year, then again you have to make clear what comes after. So how do you think the funding will be next year, right? So if it's to establish that thing, you need like devices to get this long-term monitoring running. Of course, that is something that we would support. But if it's a 5-year project and you want us to support just the third year, then it's not easy to get the funding. I don't know if that was the idea behind the question.
Yeah. We have two more questions. Is it possible for NGOs to partnership with your organization? If yes, how?
Depends on the partnership. So we always so we always team up with organizations in terms of linking with social media and these kind of things. So to spread the word about amphibian conservation, definitely we can partner. If the question is becoming a long-term partnership, if that's the case, that's more in the question of the portfolio thing. So for the long-term partnerships, it's something that we more decide on within the boards, what fits with our donors and what are the donors asking for and kind of things. So becoming long-term partners, it's another story. It's not so easy. But yeah, it depends on the partnership.
Thank you. Um, Simon asks, do NGOs who apply need recommendation letters as well, or the recommendation letter is only for the individual applicant?
Well, that depends. So I mean, always if you're part of NGO, of course, there's one main applicant and there's the NGO, and ideally, the recommendation letter would cover both. Um, um, so we don't need to have two letters. So actually, it's most of the letters we get about the person, but then it's always, or not always, but most of the time, it's the context of the NGO the guy is working for, the people are working for. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And we have a comment from Vishal. Wonderful presentation, Tobias. A lot to know and learn from you, and this helps for the ongoing Sicilian
Yes.
conservation project in Western Ghats.
Yes. I get back to you, Vishal, about your project. I want to learn more. And yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, if there are any more questions, thank you very much, everyone, for attending this webinar. We are going to upload this one as the other ones to the YouTube channel. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and watch again the webinar, or you can go ahead and contact Tobias. So yeah, if there are no other questions, I think this would be all for today. Do you have something else you would like to tell us, Tobias?
I don't think so. No, I just can motivate everybody to stick to conservation on amphibians. I think it's really important, but you know all know about that. So you think it's yes, that's I don't have anything to add on that.
Okay, well, thank you then. And can you share your email? Yeah.
I can just maybe I just type it in the chat and there you go.
Okay.
All right. Then we'll just say goodbye to everybody and see you next time.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Tobias.
Thank
This
you,
was
Toby.
amazing.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Goodbye.
Mm.